Hi everyone, welcome to Ashley Gaboury Fine Art, Drawing Wolves. We'll give people a couple minutes here to get logged in and join us. Hi everybody, good to see everybody today. We are going to be drawing wolf eyes today. That is our subject. We are going to learn a little bit about how to draw the shapes of wolf eyes. And then we are also going to add some color. So I'm going to kind of give you some tips and tricks about how to add color to wolf eyes. So we'll get going here. I'll show you guys a few of the supplies that you'll be needing to kind of follow along with me. If you just want to watch, that's cool too. We are going to be using, I'm going to be using markers, but if you want to use pencil crayons, just choose pencil crayons in the same kind of color family that I'm showing you, okay? Good to see everybody today. Hope everybody's doing well. If you're just logging in, just say a quick hello in the chat, just so I can see if it's working. And see if we got any people getting on. Oh, yep, I see. I'm seeing it here. That's awesome. It's working. Thank you so much. So last week we had a little bit of technical difficulties with filming. We were doing our best to make sure these sessions get recorded. But yeah, sometimes technology can be a little bit difficult, but we are definitely trying our best, and the town is trying their best. So we thank them very much for giving me this opportunity to come and draw with you guys. The town of Okotoks and Okotoks Culture and Heritage, they have been amazing. So let's get to drawing wolves. I'm just going to flip my camera back around here, and then you guys can see what we're going to be working on today. So I hope everybody can see that all right. Oh, got some, yeah, getting some people in. That's awesome. So we are going to be drawing our wolf eyes today. This is one that I have done prior. He kind of looks like an angry wolf, but I'll show you some of the techniques on building that up. But first, we're going to start with our sketch, okay? So I'll show you the tools that you're going to be needing first. Let me just see if I can very carefully carry this over to the screen so you can see. So what I've kind of laid out are some basic tools, pencil, HB pencil, or whatever your favorite sketching pencil is, some sort of an inking pen. A permanent pen is preferred if you're using markers, just because you don't want there to be any bleeding going on. So something that says India ink or permanent ink, that's what you're looking for. We have 3 different colors of markers. I'm using kind of a lighter creamy yellow, more of a middle warm yellow, and then kind of a reddish brown color. And then I'm going to be using a couple of shades of gray as well. So I'm using a warm gray 1 and a warm gray 3 in the Copics. So start with lighter ones, and you can always build up darker if you choose. So those are the tools, the tricks, the tools and of the trade, and I'll show you some tricks that we can use those in a little bit, but we'll start with just our regular pencil. I'm going to be drawing today on marker paper. I'm using a Strathmore marker paper. It's my favorite. I'm actually using the kids pad. It's cute. It has a little cat on the cover. It's my favorite. It's very economical. It blends well. Just one tip when you're using marker papers, always use the side that that comes in the pad, like the facing up side, because that's the side that doesn't have like the coating. Sometimes papers have a coating on the back, and that won't work well for markers. This one is an exception. This one I find works good on both sides, but most marker papers will have that. So we're going to be drawing wolf eyes. I'm going to try to draw the set, but we'll probably only get around to coloring one. So that'll be, I'm just going to adjust my camera just a little bit here, just to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see what we're drawing. Having a little bit of trouble getting it lined up today, but that's okay. Okay, Sorry about the little bit of shadows in there. That's just my filming equipment deciding to rear its ugly head. So when we're drawing wolf eyes, I always like to start with kind of the circular shape. So what you can do to start, if you're at all worried about placement, and my wolf eyes, like the head is tilted just a little bit in the picture, so it's not completely a front view. You might hear my dogs barking in the background. I didn't manage to get them next door, so just don't mind them. They're good pups, but they can get a little loud sometimes. So we've got a line down the center. I know it's hard to tell that it's the center of my page, but that's where it is. And then we're going to do a line through the middle. And again, because their eyes aren't quite aren't quite front view, we're going to have that little bit of an issue. Sorry guys, I'm just going to turn my camera. Sorry about that, guys. But that is the case of this COVID thing. We are dealing with our animals and creatures in our lives pretty much at all times. So we're going to draw some circles for our eye shapes. So I have one trick with drawing circles. So if you at all struggle with drawing circles, try to make your circles about the same size. This one's going to be a little bit further away from the center line. And then the next one's going to be a little closer. But when you're drawing those circles, if you struggle, draw a plus sign. And that I'll show you on the next side so you can see what I mean. So just slide it down so you can see a little bit closer this circle is going to be. And if you struggle, start with a plus sign. Now this one's going to be just slightly higher. If your eyes aren't exactly the same as mine, that's okay. I'm not sure what's going on outside, but yeah, we are getting some dog barking in the background there. I'm sorry about that, guys. So we've got our two circle shapes for our eyes. Try to make them as even as possible. I'm doing my best to make them even here, but if they're not exactly the same, again, this is just a trial, a practice. You can get those little, sometimes those green stencils that you can use for circle making. That sometimes helps. They sell those at like Staples or art supply stores, even carry them sometimes. Those are nice to kind of help make sure your shapes are big. I think this one might be just a bit big. I'm going to make it just a bit smaller here. Sometimes it is. The circles take time, but we're going to lose a little bit of this shape anyway. So if they're not perfect, that's okay. There we go. So I got my little erasing tool here. Felt very rushed this morning. I'm not usually rushed coming into these things, but took a little trip to the off-leash park. I'm actually puppy sitting 2 extra dogs right now, so it's kind of chaotic in my life, in my household. But I'm sure you guys, since you like drawing wolves, I'm sure you guys all appreciate dogs and the kind of fun stuff they can get into. So once you have your 2 circles placed, you can see this one's again a little bit closer to the line, the center line, and it's also just slightly higher than the other one. And it's just the way that our head is tilted a little bit. And then the second eye here is lining up pretty much on this center line or circle. And it's a little touch further away. And if I was going to think placement wise, there's about 3 eye shapes widths here where you're only getting about 2 on the other side. And that's just the slight tilt of the head that we're drawing today. I am working from a reference photo, so After I do that, after I get the kind of circles in place, and you can use measuring tools on your photo to kind of figure out that placement and things like that. Like even a ruler or anything like that, just to help you get proper measuring. But for today, we're just kind of going for it. So we're going to draw our eye shape. So this is actually the shape of the eyelid that you're drawing. So it's kind of that outer shape. So usually I start with a curved line that kind of crosses through that circle. This eye from the picture I'm looking at, it's a little bit more closed than the other eye. So we're going to have one curved shape there. And then we're going to have a second that kind of curves. Now, this one, the top line was just a very smooth curve, right? This one's going to be more like what I call a soft S. So you're curving up and then you're curving back to connect. So when I talk about soft S's, you take the letter S and you're stretching it out, right? So it goes up and back, just like you're swooping the two swoops of an S. You're just stretching that out a little bit. So that's the one side. We're gonna do the other side, same thing. I think you guys can see that pretty good. We're gonna smoothly draw. Feel a little bit out of practice with a pencil right now. I've been drawing a lot on my iPad. I've actually been drawing wolves. Could you guess it? Because I'm going to be making a coloring book for the Yamnuska Wolf Dog Sanctuary. I'm really excited about that project. So that is something that hopefully I'll get out there soonish. Got about 10 drawings done so far, so it takes a while to get enough to fill a book, but we're getting there. So the other one is a little bit more open. You can see top curve shape. And this one, we're getting a little bit of a smoother transition. It's going more pointy, and then it goes out again, and then it goes back in towards that kind of tear duct area. And actually, they don't have tear ducts like we do, but they do have that same kind of shape down there, that pointy shape. So I love drawing eyes. I love drawing animal eyes. I love drawing people eyes, but I think of all the eyes, I think wolf eyes are my favorite to draw. So after this, next thing we're going to do is draw kind of the dark shape that goes around the eyes. So we're going to make this swoop a little bit thicker, like this shape here a little bit thicker, by adding another kind of soft S, and it kind of mirrors that same shape you did on the other side. And then you're going to do the same thing here. This one might be a little bit skinnier to start, just on the shape, just based on the photo that I'm looking at. So and then we're going to draw kind of a curved shape that comes in on that side, and the same thing on that side. So it's just a little bit smaller of a shape. Again, we're not trying to make a match, so don't worry about the matching. If we were drawing a front view, you might be a little more concerned about that. So, and then I'm going to erase that. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to erase the plus sign yet, because I want to draw a circle in the middle for my pupil. That's the dark part. So we drew the big circle. That was our iris. And then we're drawing our pupils. If I'm going too fast, just let me know. I'll slow down. Again, these are some of my favorite things to draw, so I just kind of go for it. I think this one might be just a little bit off. I'm just going to move it over a little bit. I think my initial sketch was a little bit off. Again, these are stylized wolf eyes, so if I wanted to do more realistic, I would take a lot more time with my reference photo. But we're getting kind of the gist of it today. So once you've got those in, then you're going to erase your plus signs, and you're going to erase that top of the circle and any of the circle that's showing through that you don't want to see. So clean up your pupil, make sure your pupil is nice and round. Take your time on the pupil. That's another thing. Always with the circles, take your time. I like my little erasing tool here because it's just makes it handier for me, especially in this kind of tight space I'm working in with the camera right in front of my face. It's just easier for me to erase with. You can use like a back of a pencil or even a click pencil eraser. Those little erasers are good, but this is one of my favorite tools, the Factus, and it's refillable. And I recommend it for all my drawing classes. It is a great tool. So I'm really excited to hopefully be getting some classes going again, maybe soon, maybe even in the summertime. Again, won't be huge class sizes or anything, but that's okay. I just miss teaching. So here are our basic eye shapes. Now we're going to put in a little circle for a highlight. We might lose it and have to put it back in with a gel pen later. If I was working smaller, I'd really worry about that, but since we're working big, I'm going to move it over just a little bit. So you're going to make a little highlight in each eye. Now, it doesn't have to be inside the pupil, but this time in my photo reference, it is. So I'm just going with it. Sometimes it'll overlap. Try to make those about the same size. I think this one needs to be just a touch bigger. That's the thing with drawing circles. Just take your time. You can see I'm kind of doing these smooth lines. I can't do a whole circle in one swoop. To me, that doesn't work. Some artists are able to do it, but so now we have our basic eye shapes in. The next thing we're going to do is draw kind of the fur texture that's around the eyes. You get like this teardrop shape that happens. I'm going to lightly draw it in pencil, and that's what I want you guys to do too. Lightly sketch it in pencil, kind of that teardrop. It kind of goes right about there. Losing the tip of it a little bit. There you go. And then under the eye, you kind of get a reverse effect. You get more of a swoop. A soft S that you're pulling, and then it kind of connects in here, and then we've got the kind of the muzzle shape that's starting to be defined, right? You might have a little bit of the on the other side, same thing, just going to be slightly different. We're going to have, I'll start with that kind of muzzle line so you guys can kind of see it's a little, the head's turned a little bit. So we're getting a little bit farther away from our line here, and we're curving a little bit more here. It's just subtle, but there we go. We're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to slightly curve and make our teardrop kind of shape on the other side. You see how it's not as high up this time? Could make it a bit higher maybe. There we go. That's better. And then we're going to have that soft S again, a little bit shorter this time. And kind of get these shapes. You see how that's starting to become the kind of shapes of your wolf. Now, since it's a little bit of a 3/4 view, if we do like a little V here to kind of show you the fur texture, the direction of the fur, you're going to see it's curved a little bit this way and then a shorter curve this way. I don't know if that's making sense for you guys. I'm hoping that is. See if I can move it up a little bit. So now that we have our kind of roughed in eye shapes. We'll do a little bit of fur texture lines, and then we'll start adding in our color. So I am going to focus more just on one eye just for now, just to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see, easier for you guys to kind of follow along. And then if you want to go and do the other eye later on, you can. So we have our eye shape that's all sketched out. What I like to do is kind of just find the fur direction and kind of put that in. And it kind of goes around the eye this way, and then it comes back down this way. So just lightly kind of put in. You're not going to fill in all the shape because we'll do that with some of our pencil crayon or markers. There we go. So we've got our eye shape laid in. Again, I'll show you the whole picture with both eyes. So you see how that kind of comes along. And this is our eye shape that we're going to focus on now, just so I can show you the steps. So when you're drawing anything with markers, so if you are going to be going the marker route, when you're drawing anything with markers, you want to test your markers first on the tester paper. So tester paper, I usually have a little spare piece here that's kind of playing out. I'm going to show you guys a little bit about how to blend with the markers just before we get on to the actual picture. So I kind of like to do light to dark. Now you might only have 2 marker colors, and that's okay. If you only have a yellow and a brown, that's fine. But I'll show you with the 3 just to kind of give you a little more depth if you want. So I like the Copic markers because they have a brush tip. And again, I grabbed the wrong side. So the brush tips are phenomenal to work with. If you have any questions as we're going along, just make sure to let me know in the chat. The brush tip here is a great tool for creating these long strokes, right? So when I'm working with markers, I usually go light to dark, but when I'm doing eyes, I tend to go the reverse. I go dark to light. I'm not sure why I'm flipping that. This isn't the brown that I usually use. Let me just double check if it's going to work. Yeah, that should be all right. I usually use one that's just a slight bit darker, but it's all dried out. So I'll use this one today. My favorite color for the markers is dark suntan. And this one might be a little on the red side. I might switch it to this one. They're both kind of, yeah, that's better. Okay, so this one's called Redwood. Dark suntan is still my favorite, but this one will work. So you want kind of a reddish brown. So when you're doing in a small confined space, like an eye, what I like to do is I like to start with my darker color. And if you go over your pupil, it's not a big deal. And then I can go in with my middle color and really scrub, because you don't have much room for scrubbing in small spaces, so that's why I don't do light to dark. And sometimes you can even do stippling to kind of get that in. You see how that kind of, you're getting that gradation effect. And in the bottom, you're going to go lighter. So I'll show you on the actual eye. That's just kind of a rough kind of idea of what we're doing, okay? So you're going to edge with your marker. Now, if you're using pencil crayon, you can do the same thing, but just lightly edge with the pencil crayon or the marker. With pencil crayon, you might want to kind of scrub in circular motion. I'm going to try to go around my pupil, but if I get into it, it's not the end of the world. Because we're going to make that nice and dark anyways. So You see I'm leaving these little ticks at the end. That's the important part. Just kind of leaving these little dashes with the markers anyways. With the pencil crayon, you can kind of layer the colors on top of each other. So as long as you're working lightly, you can get nice blends and gradations. So I've got that. Then I'm going to start, I've gone about halfway in the eye with that. Then I'm going to start with my yellow. I'm going to drag it. And I might need to do a little bit of stippling just to help it blend. Stippling is when you do little dots, because this is a bigger area than, just do some little dots in there. Sometimes this is a pretty big eye I'm doing. And then I can use the marker, scrub it a little bit. Now I want to leave it quite light at the bottom. You can see I'm gone into my circle a little bit, but that's okay. So I'm going to use my lighter marker, but if you use the darker one to fill it in too, you can. Again, edge if you can. Kind of fill that in. I'm going to let that dry. And then I might go in and do a little bit of white pencil crayon on top of that, but you want to make sure it's dry first if you're using the markers. You can make it a little bit darker at the top just by layering a little more color. There we go. So there is our gradation. That's what they call it. When I'm teaching kids classes, I call it ombres. So this is kind of a nice warm, kind of golden colored eye for a wolf. They can be kind of goldish, or they can be more kind of yellow, or they can go more to your kind of greeny gold, which is really pretty as well. You could definitely use watercolors for this. It would be amazing. See, someone's got their hand up. I'm wondering if I'm missing something in the chat. So someone's asking about blending with pencil crayon. Yes, just tiny circles and just kind of layer your colors. That gives you more of a blend effect. And then I'm going to push a little harder with my white to kind of put in that white at the bottom. The white pencil crayon to kind of give it that glow at the bottom. That's what you want. That white's not showing up quite as good. That one might be a little better. Give it that glow, right? So once you've got that in, I'm going to kind of go in with some gray markers now. I always like to build up kind of light to dark. Sometimes I'd usually do the gray first, but I wanted to really get in there and show you guys the color blends. So the gray marker I'm using is my lightest gray. This one's my warm gray 1. And you can do the same thing with pencil. You're just going to kind of pull your strokes, longer strokes. What I like to do is, and you don't need to leave your pencil in if you want to lighten that out so it's not as prominent, you can do that. And then you use your markers to kind of show those same fur strokes that we did before. Kind of press and lift if you're using markers. If you are using a chisel tip, you can use a chisel tip for this. Some markers are your only chisel tips. Just hold it this way so that the big part is pointing down. And then you're going to kind of press and lift with that. And you can get similar strokes. They might be a little narrower. They will give you that fur kind of stroke. I just find the brush tips are a little easier. And then you can layer in here. Well, that's what I like to do. Again, kind of follow the direction of the hair. And I often rotate my thing to make it a little easier to pull these lines, but to kind of keep it easier for you guys to see. Oh, I won't do that today. And then you can kind of pull in here too, so it starts to. You can come outside of the shapes that we made. We're just going to darken those shapes a little bit to make them a little more prominent in a little bit. So a little short. Hope everybody can see that. I'm going to pull it up just a little closer just so you can kind of see what I'm doing, okay? And then I'm going to switch to my gray mark, my little bit darker gray marker. I could go back and layer and layer and layer. Like you could keep doing this for hours, but I don't want to keep you guys all day. So around kind of where the edges are, that's where you want it to be a little bit darker. See if I can pull this one without changing the angle. There we go. That worked not too bad. Watercolors, you would just wet your brush, right? And do the same thing. You'd use a round brush and you would kind of like press and lift and kind of get that flick stroke. I would definitely recommend a thicker paper, like a watercolor paper or a Bristol board for that. They usually have a little bit of a break here. That's why I'm adding this little bit extra dark area. And then I'm making it a little darker. And I'm going to shape the kind of those lines that we put in for that darkness around the eyes. I'm going to shape those a little bit. I think I am going to pull out one darker marker. I might not have quite grabbed the darkest one that I was going to use. That's okay. Don't want to go too dark. Let's try this one. There we go. Yeah, that's good. So this is a neutral gray. Doesn't really matter. You could stick with your warm grays. This is a neutral gray 4, so it's not a lot darker, but I was using a warm gray 3 before. Just so you kind of see the comparison. And I'm going to fill in the dark parts around the eye. I could get even darker in there if I wanted. I could do a few more layers or just switch up to a darker marker, but we'll leave it for now. And then because I want it to blend, I'm going to add these little ticks on the inside of this bigger area. The other area will probably blend all right without it. And I'm going to switch back to my lightest marker because I want there to be like a glow in there or a highlight. I'm going to blend that in. Now I could ink this first, but because it's bled a little bit, just because I'm kind of rushing a bit, it's good to ink it at the end because then if you do go out of your shapes a little bit, it's not such a big deal. It's not what I wanted. It's the only thing I see. I put tape on one side so it reminds me what side has the chisel tip so I don't grab it all the time, but I do it anyways. So we can put our pupil in because this has had time to dry. I'm taking my pen. If you are using watercolors, the only thing I would say is make sure it's dry completely before you do any pen work. So I'm going around that highlight in the eye just because it's big enough that I can do that. But if you say you're drawing a little bit smaller, or you've gone into it, you can use a white gel pen to kind of put that highlight back in. Just make sure that the pen has a chance to dry. If you only have one type of gray, is it a lighter gray? You can usually layer it and it'll get a little bit darker. It might not get as dark as the one in that I've done, but you can put that in, or you can even use your pencil just to give yourself a little bit of shading if you need to get a bit darker in places. I like to have about 2 or 3 grays when I'm working. But yeah, if you layer your markers, they will get darker. Just use what you got today. So put that in there, that nice highlight. I am gonna think, yeah, this is dry enough. I'm gonna outline my kind of wolf eye shape. I'm just going to turn it because I can't quite do what I need to do without it turned. Sorry, guys. I'm going to do just a few little kind of dashes to kind of show the eyelash hairs in there. You don't want it to be right smooth right on that top edge. If you got it smooth right now, that's not a big deal, but try not to have it too smooth in there. Kind of thicken this up a little bit. Usually they kind of dip down a little bit, so just kind of tweaking the shape a little bit as I'm going. And their eyes are quite dark around, so I think I'm going to fill this whole part in with dark. And kind of fill in there with dark too. Start adding a little more fur texture in. Switching my gray a little bit just to if you have a lighter gray, you're just going to be doing more layers. That's pretty much you can build it up quite a bit just with layers. You won't achieve quite as dark as what I have, but I'll just keep working those. I'm just building it up. Sometimes I'll do like kind of zigzaggy shapes in here, or like crosshatch. Kind of build up that shape. And I can keep layering in my lighter color too to kind of build even more fur texture. If you're just using pencil, you would just shade it more around these parts, right? Or choose a slightly darker color. And the harder you push on pencil crayons, the darker it gets as well. So you could do that. There's lots of ways. It's just play around with what works for you. Everybody's a little different, so. Doing some little bit smaller ticks now, just to kind of build up the furs on the inside. And I might go a little bit darker. Because it is almost black, like jet black around their eyes, right? So you just want a little bit of highlight in there. So that's my trick with markers and pencil crayons. Just layer, build up your layers. And I do have a marker video on my website, or not on my website, sorry, on my Facebook page, Ashley Gaboury Fine Art. So if you want to see a few more tricks about how to use markers, they're on there. They are great. And I'm trying to kind of get some marker projects into a book format. So I do teach what's called modern markers, which is a workshop, which I teach a lot of different pictures. So just use the white pencil crayon to put a little more highlight back in if I want. And I can build it up a little bit more if I need to again. Careful not to layer on top of the pencil crayon too much because it does gum up your markers, but I do it still sometimes. You can replace the nibs on the Copics, so I kind of cheat and put a little bit of an edge. Or say my shape isn't quite right, I can use the pencil crayon to adjust that shape a little bit. I think we did pretty good today, guys. Is everybody feeling more confident drawing wolf eyes or drawing in general? Because I feel like you guys are doing good. I'm hoping anyways. That's the hard thing about not doing classes where I can see what you're doing is I just have to kind of go with my flow, right? So I'm hoping to get some drawing classes going in the fall again. Oh, drawing is probably my favorite class to teach. I teach a lot of teen classes and adult classes as well. So check out for those coming up in the fall. Don't forget to check out my website as well, ashleygaboury.com. See if I pop that in there so you guys can see it. It's been awesome doing a lesson with you guys today. I hope that you have enjoyed it as much as I have. It's been great. I lost you guys here. I don't know what I did on my phone, but there we go. We'll find you. You guys did awesome today. It was awesome drawing with you. I'll show you guys the more finished one before I go here. So that one just has a little more layers, a little bit more darks in it. Just built it up a little bit more. So so both are good. It really depends on the look you're going for, the style you're going for. Thank you again for joining me today, and I hope you guys all have an amazing weekend. Bye.